Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin Bizzarro and at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs. If you're a food entrepreneur, beverage entrepreneur, hospitality entrepreneur, nutrition, farming, we have put the community together for you guys. It's taken us 2 years. I apologize. A lot of trial and error. I had to go through a dark night of the soul, take a leave of absence. But all the information is there on Gorilla Brave that everyone's asked for. That's all the information in my head. 28 years of being an entrepreneur, being in the food and beverage game, restaurants, food trucks, everything that I've been a part of, POS systems, logistics, farming. I filtered it then through the podcast, all the interviews, and then filtered it through academics, information, did a lot of studying, spent a lot of time doing that. One of the things seminary taught me was how to study, read a lot, and cross-reference information, a lot of information quickly. So that was, one of the benefits there to help do Gorilla Brave for everyone. Information's there. There will be networking events around the country with a speaker at each one. And then we're planning 3 summits already, 2 this year in the United States, and then 1 next spring in Australia. So that is sort of going on. Those summits will be limited to 40 people each. That being said, I have a guest back with us. I've known this person, like 25 years maybe. I think I've known you more than half my life. But I have a very special guest with us, Albie Masland of Levitate out of Raleigh, North Carolina. How are you doing, Albie?
I'm doing well, Justin. It's good to be on here with you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. It's hard to think it has been that long. I met Albie when we were at Dickinson College together. I think I was a junior or a senior when you were a freshman. But I was
Correct.
A very young entrepreneur building a company, trying to balance life, money in some ways, girls, soccer, and building a business all at the same time. And I thought that was normal for everyone else. I didn't realize that being an entrepreneur is even though we hear a lot about it in the world today, it is actually atypical. So, Albie, let's talk about your adventure, your life, where you're from, sort of what led you on this path. I think you've always been an entrepreneur at heart. You've always been doing things differently. You've run across the country twice, I believe. So I want to talk about all that. So let's start at the beginning and why you are where you are now, because I think all of it led to Levitate.
Absolutely. I think, I was always given the opportunity growing up at any stage of my early formative years to figure it out. I was not raised with a lot of guardrails, and for better or for worse, my parents let me find out, for better or for worse. And I think that sort of independent, creative, experiential living is something that is constantly referenced in my day-to-day experiences now as an entrepreneur, but prior to that, and all of the work that I've done professionally, it's always very much been an experience, for the most part, where I'm going to go do Albie things. And that allows me to lean into my strengths, my creativity, my relentless optimism. And I think that those factors are absolutely essential to any entrepreneur. But it's certainly something that I am grateful for as I reflect on this, even as I'm speaking. I really, truly appreciate the way that my parents guided me through this life. And I think that is certainly a major factor in why I am the way I am, for better or for worse.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I think guidance, and sometimes it doesn't always go well or look so well on the outside, but there is a greater lessons learned and a greater growth, a lot of independence, ability to figure out things, and no matter what the situation is, be okay.
Absolutely.
So go on from there. So childhood goes into college years.
Yeah, I think obviously I grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, which is also where Dickinson College is, which is where we met. And, I think my time at Dickinson was better spent on socializing and having fun than it was on spending time, effort, and energy on my studies. But I think also therein was a massive lesson. I graduated late from Dickinson. I didn't see myself in the time as, about to graduate late, but I got kicked in the teeth right before graduation when I found that kind of thing out. And I think that was an important marker in my life as far as having a greater sense of awareness of what I was doing, what I wanted to do, and what I had done. Now, it's not to say I learned that lesson perfectly, because in some ways, after college, working for a lawyer, going to law school, I relearned that lesson to some extent. But, the experience of failure, I think, is really, really crucial. I think there are a lot of individuals that don't experience a massive failure until much later in life. And I think if you're able to learn what failure feels like, if you're able to reflect and see where your lack of effort resulted in that failure, there are a lot of really important lessons. And I think that those experiences didn't deter my optimism. I think, if anything, they only fueled it further, in that I have had these experiences that for many would classify as very negative, both in graduating late from college and in failing out of law school halfway through and electing not to go back to it. You know, everything was okay. It wasn't to say that I was dismissive of it. It wasn't to say that I didn't, feel an extreme weight of disappointment, but you keep moving, you keep an active mind, you keep an active body, and you put one foot after the next, and you're on to whatever it is that next step. And for me, as you alluded to, I put that into a very physical format with what I like to think of as the big reset in my life. And that was post law school failure. And that was electing to run across the United States, something of a therapeutic effort to process the different things that I had failed at up until that point, something of a punishment. Like, you're going to go and put this work in, you're going to earn something, you're going to show yourself after this that what you've been doing is not the way, and what you just did in running across the country will be the new standard. But also the curiosity, the exploration, the ability to be at ground level across our incredible country, and to do all of this in the name of a fallen Marine who gave his life in service to your country, and to raise money for other service members and their families who had that same loss or were coming back and transitioning. It was a really sort of beautiful combination of things. And certainly it was more than what I could have even imagined. And it was a start, or a reset to start on what has been a really nice nearly 13 years since.
Let's talk about where you are now. Let's talk a little bit about the journey you've sort of transitioned in life. You do have a family. You decided that you were going to take this leap further into entrepreneurism. I think you've already always been sort of dabbling in it. Let's talk about starting the business, past experience that allowed you to get to where you are and starting the business. Because I know we were talking 2 summers ago a lot. You were just building then. So there's a lot there, a lot of decisions being made to get to where you are 2 years later. I think it's important that we discuss those milestones.
Definitely. And I would say something that I'm always really quick to identify and clarify is that I didn't come to this. No one's entrepreneurial journey looks the same, for one. My entry into what I do now did not look at all like this when I first started. And I say that because I'd finished running across the country. I spent a decade building all sorts of programs, transition focused, in service to veterans, working with communities all around the country. I left that opportunity during COVID and worked for a startup. And after a little over a year with that startup, the opportunity and the synergy, it was pretty clear that we were going in different directions. And I decided I was just going to set up my own book of business and I was going to do Albie things. I was going to find mutual value and bounce around rooms and create what I believed would add value to any business. And so I picked up a client, another Dickinsonian, and then I called my business partner now, who was the Marine who I initially met at the Travis Manion Foundation. He was one of the first people I pitched the idea of running across the country to. And he and I had stayed in touch over the decade that followed. And I hit him up and he was working in the cannabis space. And I said, James, I'd love to do, 10 hours a week of business development for you. Let's see what we can get cooking. I have a personal interest in this. I have a professional interest in this. And he said, Albie, I don't want your business development. I want you to run one of my companies, which is not the kind of casual conversation that I was initially entering into. And he said, we built this company. It's a part of our portfolio. We have assets in Michigan. We have license and assets in Delaware. And then we have a hemp company that has two separate CBD brands. It's more or less the skeletal framework all in place. These brands obviously have product, but the individual that we initially thought was going to lead this effort is not the right fit. I think you're the perfect engine for this car. But with all that said, I will give you ownership right off the bat. I will give you incentives to acquire more ownership. I will mentor you and guide you in this process. And all that to say, there are no sacred cows. Take this entity and make it into your own. And that's a really interesting proposition. And at the time, I was trying to decide between this and much more, call it financially secure situation with another opportunity. But I thought to myself, and I talked to different people in my life that add value, and eventually kind of came to the conclusion that when do you ever get offered ownership stake in a company in this kind of format? When do you ever get offered ownership and the ability to take something that's been sort of pre-built and renovate it entirely to make it your own? That is something that at the time certainly I had never done, and I think in a lot of ways that felt kind of daunting and scary, but I like daunting and scary things. And so I said yes to the opportunity and basically started about a year and a half process of what I like to think of, renovating a fixer-upper. The company, like I said, had two separate brands. They were selling CBD tinctures, and I wiped out both of those brands. I wiped out 90% of the products that were being offered. I did not believe and felt confident and was correct in the fact that they were not the form factors that were best fitted to grow a company or to serve where the consumer was going at the time. And this process was wild. I mean, I think, again, if you've ever watched a fixer-upper show, you have your demo days, you have your days where you're planning on installing something big and something goes wrong. You have your situations where something doesn't look like it's going to work and it actually ends up having this wonderful silver lining. And, the approach very much from the start was, I am not a CBD company. I'm not a hemp company. I do what I call hybrid plant performance. And with that, I meant that I'm interested in all of the cannabinoids. I'm also very interested in functional mushrooms and equally so interested in what natural extracts, when paired with these other two fungi and cannabinoids, can create as far as daily and nightly wellness products. And so I was able to raise some money from another Dickinsonian, and I was able to create these two products. We had a multi-ingredient daily product called Launch. We had a multi-ingredient nightly product called Landing. And the company had been renovated again to be called Valorcraft Performance. Valorcraft Performance was, again, working with what I had and aligning my brand with the THC-facing brand in the portfolio that was called Valorcraft. So again, working with what I had, over the course of time and getting to a place where I was able to launch these 2 daily and nightly products and having, been able to raise some money on this concept, we entered into the market. And the reality was we were entering into a very different hemp market than what it was when I initially started. I live down here in North Carolina, and for anyone that does not live in a hemp established state, you have these medical marijuana states, you have these adult use marijuana states, and then you have this really interesting evolution that's taken place in these other states where they interpreted accurately and legally defensibly the Farm Bill of 2018's reestablishment of what hemp is, reclassification of what hemp is, to be something that could also include THC psychoactive type products that were comparable to what you would find in the medical or adult use markets in other states that have these established programs. And so I was introducing products that did not have this psychoactive effect to locations that at one point were only carrying CBD type products, but we're now at this point saying, what kind of effect does this have? Does this have Delta 8 at the time? Does this have Delta 9 as it's evolved? And Delta 9 is molecularly identical to the THC that people are familiar with. And so, very quickly I was facing this challenge and this timing issue with what I had created with these gummies. All that to say, people that tried them, people that had regular access to them, really, really liked them. The launch gummy had lion's mane, it had apple cider vinegar, it had beetroot, it had B12, it had CBD. The landing gummy had CBD, CBN, skullcap extract, and melatonin, and they were effective. But again, the market was not looking for this. And so when I would go into stores to push this, 9 times out of 10 individuals were saying, sorry, but this is what we're carrying now. And it was very obvious when you looked at the shelves that it was, something comparable to Delta 9 THC. So I knew that I was going to have to make some changes, and I was comfortable with that fact and frankly had sort of held off on it initially. But at that time, I realized that it was going to need to include some sort of THC. And I figured I would just pair that in with these already existing products and reboot the launch and landing gummies to include some THC alongside it. That would make me more palatable to the market. That would make, my opportunity grow as far as the ability to capture consumers. And we were going down the path of sort of retooling those formulations. And it was 2 summers ago, I went into one of my favorite retail spots and they had drinks. They had THC drinks that were legal. And I tried my first one and I said, this is what I'm doing. It was really like that kind of dramatic. I had a sip and then I had the whole can. And then I knew that I was not making gummies. I knew that I was not going to be going down that path, that I was going to get into the beverage space because the beverage form factor is such a natural intersection for the way we consume things in our society. We drink everything. We drink to have fun. We drink to get vitamins. We drink to get energy. We drink to relax. We drink to go to sleep. And the comfort factor that a beverage provides to not only the historic cannabis consuming customer, it's, oh, well, now I can drink it, but even more so to the consumer that is not a regular cannabis user, but can understand the process of drinking something versus taking a gummy, versus smoking a joint, versus hitting a bong, right? Your first entry into cannabis should be something that is comfortable, something that is familiar, and the beverage is exactly that.
It's incredible. So let's talk about, like, how do you have this idea you're going to get into beverages. It's different than manufacturing gummies. You probably have to find different co-packer if that's the direction you're going. Talk to me about finding co-packers if that's the direction you went. Talk to me about now building in a different direction, because you're talking about a beverage is different than a gummy. So let's just talk about the mindset there. How do you develop a beverage, the flavor, the drink, the integration, because there's trial and error. It's not easy.
Absolutely. And it was way more challenging and intense than I could have ever imagined. But again, I enjoyed the daunting, I enjoyed the challenges. So we had already been talking to a formulation team as far as the gummies were concerned, I was then quickly introduced to a great operation, a great individual that was a large entity and already in the beverage production space. They had a very talented R&D team. And I said, look, this is what I've been doing with the gummies. I want to replicate this same kind of approach with a beverage. And, from there we were off. And what we ended up landing on pretty quickly, because we already had this sort of conceptual knowledge with the gummies, was that we were going to use a low dose of THC. We were going to use cordyceps mushrooms that are beneficial as far as energy, endurance, and respiratory function. They have also been around for thousands of years. We are also going to pair that with L-theanine, which is great for a focused, de-stressed experience that comes from green tea extract. And we're also going to do something different with the minor cannabinoid that we pair with this collection, not looking at CBD, but looking at CBG, which is another more uplifting minor cannabinoid that also has some anti-inflammatory benefits as well. So this is a really creative formula. And at the time, the beverages, and really still to this extent, most of the beverages that are in the game are some version of THC, or there's some ratio of THC and CBD. I, again, felt like my approach was going to be instantly, unique and have that differentiator factor as well. And so we run through the first round of R&D, and the flavors were too sweet. And so we tamped that down. We ran through a second round of R&D, and we came out of that with 3 flavors. And this would have been heading into the end of 2023. We had identified the flavor formulation, our blood orange mango, bingo bango blood orange mango. That was the one that we were going to go forward with. We were going to introduce one SKU. We were going to be confident in that one SKU, and we would get to the addition of other flavors down the road. And, we've worked through this R&D. We've had people try the drink. People are really happy and excited about it. The effect is right where we want it to be. It's very light and sessionable. The flavor is right where we want it to be. And I'm about to get on my production call where myself and this team are going to slap the table and turn the switches on, and we're going to make this. And it would be ready in time for Thanksgiving and Christmas of 23. And I get on the call and they said, Albie, we're really sorry. We all just lost our jobs. They shut down the entire North American operation. This was an operation that was a part of a very, very, very large beverage brand. It was not a mom and pop shop thing that just sort of couldn't make it. This was an established situation. And even still, they had all just lost their jobs. And I had just been, kicked in the teeth in a lot of ways. But the silver lining of it all was I was able to work with them to get my formulas. And I wouldn't have really been able to get my formulas quite like this, but I was, as a result of the situation, able to get those formulas. And I didn't have time to dwell on it. I didn't have time to say, woe is me. I also didn't have 6 months of runway. I had an Amex card that was about to be tested. And I just had to be positive. I had to say to myself, this is the situation. How am I going to control my emotions, and what am I going to do next? And, I have those other experiences, as I alluded to. I've been face to face with failure. I have been face down in the dirt, and I am, in my head, I like to think that I'm an axe man. I will always continue to pick up the axe, and I will always continue to chop. And so that's what I did. I quickly went back to the initial group that we were about to formulate the 2.0 version of the gummies with. I said, hey, how you doing? Good to see you again. Sorry I haven't been in touch, but this is what I'm doing now. Can you help me create this beverage? They passed me over to my co-packer now, who I love and really enjoy the guys at this group. It's called New River Distilling. They have a lot of experience in the craft beer space, a lot of experience in the hop extraction space. And they were already making these kind of D9 beverages. And, pretty quickly we were able to identify that they could do it. And, the next thing we're going through the same process again. We're working towards that production run. And, it was incredible how much longer everything took in the process to get to the point where we were able to launch. The manufacturing date was moved a couple times. When the products were made, they were in the wrong cans. They were supposed to be in 12-ounce sleek cans. They were in 12-ounce standard cans. I didn't have time to worry about that, so I didn't worry about that. Then the testing, which usually takes 3 to 5 days, took 14 days. Then the payment processor that we were going to use told us that we couldn't operate under the current structure. We had to be re-audited, and that took 4 more weeks. And we then ended up finding another group entirely to take care of us. By the time the product had finished in early February to the time that we were able to launch on April 19th, that was literally a conversation daily in my head where I kept saying to myself, well, what else could possibly happen right now that would delay this? And sure enough, there was always something that was delaying it. But, again, we knew we had something that we liked, and we were excited to share it with people. And, we were able to launch it on April 19th of last year. And so, yeah, it was a different process from the manufacturing of the gummies, but something still where you have to believe in a concept, find the right partner, get a product to market, and then it's just about hustling. The flip side from gummies to beverages is beverages are really, really heavy. And there are a lot of different factors that go into that process that makes it very.
You just read my mind there. I'm like, the logistics costs are talking totally just in transportation, logistics, shipping, all that.
The margins and everything change dramatically. You're talking about a real aggressive volume and velocity play in beverage. And it's not so much the case with gummies. And, all that being said, it's been fun. I'm constantly learning something. I could have gone and spent a bunch of money and gotten an MBA. And, I think this has been, pretty equivalent in the things that I've learned in this process. And certainly the life lessons are, maybe even more impactful than the actual day-to-day business operations, learning how to do things the right way. But we are a little over 8 months live, and really early on, the first production run, we did 7,000 cans. And I told myself that I was not going to worry about anything other than putting these cans in people's hands and having them lift it to their lips and take sips of the drink that I had made, Levitate. I was going to be solely focused on the first production run in a lot of ways as a loss leader. This was marketing, and it had to happen fast. And as many people as possible needed to drink Levitate in the shortest amount of time as I possibly could make it. Yes, sales are important. Yes, generating a community is important. But it was really like, hey, do you want to try this? I'll ship you some. Hey, do you want to try this? Here you go. Hey, do you want to try this? I left some on your doorstep. Hey, do you want to try this? Tell me what your address is. I am just moving these things.
I want to pause you there for a second. Sure. I just want to point at the salesmanship here, and I hate to use that word because that's not what this is. But I'm going to use it as part of just to categorize it in some way to get everyone's mind in the right place when we think about this as a starting point. At the beginning of a business as an entrepreneur, we focus so much on getting a restaurant off the ground, or the equipment, or the menu, or in this case, a CPG, getting the product. We often forget the rest of the pieces that have to fall in place. Or there's a couple things that I just rule of thumbs. Like, everything in food always costs 3 times what you think it is when you're in the R&D process. And it will always take 3 times as long, no matter who says it. Why? It's because there's a lot of humans involved in every process of food and beverage. And with a lot of humans involved, that leads to a lot of excuses. And so everything, even though there's honest ways and things that look normal or whatever, the compounding effect is generally that there's just everyone little falls behind all the time. There's always an excuse able to be given. Maybe it's a legitimate one. But those are things that we talk about. Arguably, it's just we overpromise and underdeliver a lot in this world right now, and it's hard to do business that way. I think the marketplace would be a lot better place if we just were a little bit more honest in that way. That's just my side note, because I deal with a lot of that also in general, but I think it's in our minds, we know it can be done. It can be done. But when we add in the imperfect human and then we compound it across how much it takes, how many humans it takes to get something done in food and beverage, I think that that's why the delay. So advice to everyone, 3 times as much money as you think you need, 3 times as much time. And you better be willing to work 3 times as hard as you think you do, because that is what ends up happening. So, and what Albie said was important also. There are certain things that happen, labels, whatever. Sometimes you're going to have to roll with stuff. You're going to have to do things. You're going to have to get okay, I'll get it. I'll fix it the next time and be okay with this time. And in this time, the salesmanship, that means the more people you can contact as the CEO, as the entrepreneur in your business, literally you're the one contacting them, giving it away. You're the head honcho. It's not some marketing person or PR person. You're the one touching them. That's a big deal. And you're giving the product away. And it is so important to you that they know that you're the one doing it. You're running around doing it. I get it. You could be doing 10 million other more important things, but I would say that that's the most important at this point. The relationships you build through touch points of your product. Anyway, go ahead, Albie, from there.
No, absolutely. And a couple of things that I would add on to that, layer in all of those complexities that you spoke to in normal food and beverage, and now consider it under the lens of cannabis, because nothing is like cannabis. Nothing is like hemp as a part of the collective cannabis world. The restrictions that are placed on businesses operating, the things that you have to deal with and tolerate that normal businesses are able to write off in the tax codes, the way in which you are able to market, advertise, and speak about your products on social media platforms or on email marketing. There are endless complications that also come with this industry and only this industry. And so, that's something that I think is lost on a lot of people. I think they look at the big cannabis industry and have this assumption that people are just making money hand over fist. And the truth of it is, these states on the medical and adult use side are regulating the heck out of these businesses, almost to the point where profit and cash flow are problematic.
Yeah, it's a 33% tax in Littleton, Colorado on any marijuana business. And we're the first state to pass the law, by the way. But it's a 33% tax on top of it.
It probably costs, on average, those entrepreneurs getting into the space, at least $1 million to even get their license.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking about a very complex industry, and then you get into the aspect of the CPG side of it. So yeah, I think your advice is certainly something that I've lived and experienced. And the other thing that I would say is, I have always said to myself that I want to be the most human brand. It's not to say that other brands are not human, but I think in a lot of cases you don't see the founder. You see the brand or you see the product. You don't hear the founder's voice. You see what it looks like when it's filtered through, marketing and created on the backside. And you don't always see the founder when it's, the on the ground sales force, right? I wanted this to be very human and very personal. And, in a lot of ways that was because it was extremely personal for me. You've created something, you have poured your heart and soul, to be cliche, into this can, and you need to make it work. And you have to be willing to do all the things to make it work. And creating those personal relationships, that is always going to be the long-term ticket for sustainable growth and success. It doesn't mean, again, we all know that lots of businesses fail, even the ones that had great personal relationships, even some that had great products. But I think there's a ton of value in that. And as I look at my list of accounts now, these are 95% relationships that have been built over an extended period of time. My biggest customers are the people that I was talking to 2.5 years ago, trying to get them to buy my gummies and being told no, consistently told no, and still continuing to go back in and still continuing to say hi and still continuing to meet the staff, even knowing full well that they were going to say no to you again. And, as much as I think that's a complicated sort of thing to process, like, you have to make it personal, but you can't take it personally.
Yeah, exactly.
And
that's all customer service, right?
So difficult.
Yeah.
It's so hard, especially when you can look and you see, the other products. You're like, well, you're carrying this, why would you not want to take a chance on this? And, certainly you need those people early on who do take chances. My number one most longstanding account is really the only place that took a chance on my early stage gummies. And, we have a wonderful relationship, and I have a wonderful relationship with their staff, but replicating that across every account is really important. Even the most nascent accounts that I have, those are accounts that I need to be extra mindful of. And at this point, with Levitate, we have built up business to business side that has, 40 doors and growing with a nice reorder rate as well. We initially really thought, and this is in part because you're always going to be victim to the trappings of social media and what you see other people doing. We thought that direct to consumer was going to be a really big part of how we did this because the margins are just that much better. That was a hypothesis that I quickly altered the path from, because sure, your margins might be great, but shipping this stuff is going to really put a nice dent into those margins. The logistics of everything make that, challenging. And so, while we initially thought we would be, direct consumer, business to business, let's grow this like a skate ramp, make it really personal, make it really organic, make it really grassroots. We've shifted away in a lot of aspects from that direct to consumer side. Now, we ship cases. We are currently still shipping 4-packs, but we have also recently had the benefit of being onboarded to a wonderful non-alcoholic e-com platform called Buzz by Boisson. And they are an offshoot of larger entity called Boisson.co. And they are really one of the leading e-com platforms in the non-alc space, but they've also seen the writing on the wall with the opportunity that is this new world of beverage options that comes from the Delta 9 space. And so we can now look to start pushing people, hey, if you want to buy smaller formations of our product, go to our partners at Buzz by Boisson. I'll still ship you the cases of Levitate, but my dominant focus is on growing the B2B side. And about 5 months into the process, so really over the last 3-4 months, the focus really then became, hey, we've got something here. Like, people really like this. The texts that I get, the reviews that we've had from people are really, really strong. Like, yo, this is delicious. This is highly chuggable. I could eat the can. This gives me new life. This is amazing. I don't drink alcohol anymore. This is what I drink. Like, we've got something special. And we see, as this industry is evolving, that it's really becoming something that's not subject to getting chopped off at the knees. This is here to stay. And larger scale distribution from the alcohol side is getting into the mix. And so with those sort of, reading the tea leaf kind of things, I've spent a lot of time in the last few months really focused on getting us into large scale distribution that offers us the opportunity to capture greater consumer numbers and expand our market reach. But that's a whole new thing to me as well. So it's like, you look back on the whole process, like, I've never done this before. I didn't know I could do that. I've never done this before. I realized now I can do that. That didn't work. This didn't work. Now we're doing something entirely different. Now we're in the beverage side of things. Now we're looking at all these other new hurdles and factors that need to be considered. And even in the beverage side of things, just the fire hose is attached to my face, and I'm willingly, drinking in all the information that I can. But it's been really, really cool to see the reception of Levitate the appreciation of the flavor, the appreciation of the way the product is formulated. This is something that, I wanted to make something that could be drank by your parents as much as it could by your peers, as much as it could by the younger generation. Right. And I've done that. And that's really satisfying. And, now we are live with 2 distributors. We're live in Connecticut with a wine and alcohol distributor, and we are seeing some nice reception there. It's being sold into liquor and wine stores in that market. And we are also now about to be live in Georgia. And as we were chatting before the call, I just shipped my first full pallet, which is 1,440 cans of Levitate in 60 cases, stacked in rows of 10, 6 rows high. And there's something absolutely beautiful and incredible of getting from that early stage process, even when you think you're about to make something and then you find you're not about to make something, and then continuing to push and getting to a place where you think you're about to launch, dealing with all of the delays that impede that launch, getting it live, and then you're shipping 4-packs and 6-packs. And you're telling yourself, I can't wait till somebody gets a case. And then you get the case. And then you're telling yourself, man, I can't wait till somebody buys more than 1 case. And then you sell 10 cases. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Right?
And then you're like, well, what if we could just get to a half pallet? And then you get a distributor and they're like, we'll take a half pallet. And you're like, my God, they're going to take a half pallet. This is incredible. You load up a U-Haul and you drive it there personally, and you shake their hand and you tell them, thank you for giving me an opportunity. This means the world to me. I wanted to drive all this way just to make sure that you knew it. And then you keep chopping, and you find in that process distributors that are really like vicious, honestly, looking to lock you into these long-term burdensome agreements. They're going to take your per case cost and rip it to shreds and tell you that you're actually going to have to expect to make 3 cents off this can if you really want to do anything with us. And, you have to navigate those decisions, and it's tough because you also have to balance this with the fact that, like, I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I have a family. Like, there are factors beyond this business that are impacted by the decisions that I make with this business. And that's something that I, my heart and sympathy and empathy for other entrepreneurs on that level, like the human side of this, I feel you if you're listening. It's challenging. You need to have that support. You need to have that belief from your immediate family. And, I'm fortunate that I have it, but it's been a process in proving that I have that. So, it's a good day in the world of Levitate right now. Like I said, we're live in Connecticut. We're, awaiting word that our full pallet has arrived in Georgia. That will get out to Atlanta, Athens, and Savannah. Between those 2 opportunities, we're talking about 1,000 plus potential doors that we could get into. And those 2 early distribution networks, as well as the early success with my drink, are what we're about to go and raise $250,000 more on, because we know that we need to continue to fight. And while we have a 3 milligram beverage in the current formation, we know that the market demands, and the big box stores that are picking this up insist that you also have 10 milligram. If you want to get into Total Wines and More, if you want to get into the Krogers and the Harris Teeters that are just waiting around, to turn these sort of levers, you have to have that product. And we also have to make, and you understand this sort of economies of scale. The price point that I was able to offer on my first production run of 7,000 cans improved when I went to my next production run of 14,000 cans, right? The price break that I will receive on this next production run, which will be likely in the ballpark of 35,000 cans, is really, really important. You have to race to get those COGS down to a really, comfortable is not the word, but competitive position, so that you're then able to go out and price your product to the distributor, to the retail location, and pass that the whole way on down the value chain to a consumer that goes in and says, yeah, for that, yeah, that price makes sense. So it's, it's good times right now. It's been really intense, but we're, not to be cliche, but like we're really like just getting started, and it's exciting to see what's in front of us.
Yeah, because it has been a build. One of the things I think that is interesting is something we talked about like 2 years ago when you were starting to lean into the beverage idea fully was that beverage was probably because of alcohol, because of the power of Coca-Cola, Pepsi, it not being sort of as diverse as food and FDA and USDA and all of that, that beverage would be a way to better penetrate the market on a larger scale, especially if you had something that had real health benefits to it in contrast to what was out there. And I think you've accomplished that. I think that's important. I want to talk about this a little bit. One of the things I think about in the marijuana industry that's important is we've allowed the states to sort of run around and find their own way, which is important because the federal government doesn't want to step in yet. But it is important to understand that there is a lack of a federal regulation. So taxes, laws, they aren't universal from state to state, and they aren't universal even from county to county, sometimes even in states that have it. And so it's just, there's a lot of different ways it's been handled. It's going to be interesting how it eventually is handled on a federal level, but it is something like without an actual regulation, we're kind of just putting marijuana in whatever location. And the reality is it's very similar to tobacco, alcohol, and firearms in terms of those industries that have been set up. So I think I agree with you. Fitting into those distribution systems, fitting into those things is the right path. I think it's brilliant. Let's talk about building a team. We talked a lot about that a couple of years ago. Like, you've had to build a team now around this brand, around this company. What has that been like? You know, how do you build your team? How have you led them as this journey's gone on the last 2 years?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting conversation, and what I would say is, right now this is me. I have my business partner who also runs the parent company that has the cannabis assets now solely focused in Delaware. And, I have a fraction of the CFO's time. And because we were all situated in a portfolio, when I took this company over, we had the operations in Michigan, we had the operations in Delaware, and then we had sort of the internal admin finance company. We all shared those resources. And so, it's funny to look back on the way this last year has gone. And it's, I think, in a lot of ways, just the nature of cannabis. But at the start of 2024, my role while leading and developing Levitate also included working with a social media manager and a marketing manager. And we also supported our Michigan operations, and we also supported our Delaware operations. And so there was a lot of interconnectivity. Now, the situation in Michigan took interesting turn, and the end result of that was the Michigan operation was shut down. And in the aftermath of that, you had my entity and you had the Delaware entity, and all of these things were interdependent on each other. And so we had to go through, some really interesting austerity measures, for lack of a way to frame it, in order to, get through to the light. And in that process, I had a team, and then I really didn't have a team at this stage. It's my partner, James, who's the man, and he's a friend, and he's a mentor, and he's incredible in what he does. And he offers his time, to support and go out and hit the streets and sell Levitate. But he's also in the process of massive fundraising effort in order to scale our cultivation, manufacturing, and medical dispensary to prepare for a huge boom in the Delaware cannabis market when it shifts over to adult use. So I get his time, but I also have to respect his time. We were not able to keep all staff. And so it's been really interesting and challenging. And, in a lot of ways, my experience on this path has both included working with people and now very much is, I'm a one-man band. I am, having to think about what we will do for social media as much as I'm having to review a formal contract. And I have to make sure that I'm talking to the contract manufacturer. I have to be sure that I am minding what I'm doing financially. I have to be preparing what I'm doing from a fundraising perspective. I have to make sure that we are, good to go on our taxes. I have to wear all of those hats. And, I didn't always have to wear all of them, but I do now, and you have to willingly accept that as a part of the process. You are not guaranteed anything, and you are certainly, in that not guaranteed to have a team. With all that to say, I am very excited about the success that we've had. I'm proud of myself, though not overly prideful. I'm proud of myself for navigating through these different storms of business. And, as we look forward to this year, I fully intend and will have the money on hand to expand and really create that team from scratch, like I've always kind of wanted to. So that's something that I'm really excited about. It's a lonely adventure, entrepreneurism in general. Sometimes it can feel extremely isolating. You know this well. And, with that being said, you have to continue to hope and push and process and progress through to get to that point, because I'm really excited to get to that point where I'm able to help develop and build a culture around the team that I will need in order to continue to grow.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to point out here. One is what I actually see happening is in order to be an entrepreneur and build a business, we have to be equipped. Okay. And there's a lot of different ways we're equipped. One is, if we're going to make it as an entrepreneur, there's a mental toughness, spiritual toughness, emotional toughness. There's a failures that have taken place and hitting some bottoms that have to have taken place in life in general to be able to navigate what happens as an entrepreneur, the ups and downs, with understanding that failure's okay. You can bounce back, and you're actually good at bouncing back. Okay. That's, and you can write it any way you want. I'm just saying how it feels to me at the beginning when it was failure after failure, or there were times where I'm like, oh my gosh, how did that happen out of nowhere? Why did the government change its regulation on that? Or why would we get rid of all the cow farms and raise milk prices through the roof in 2000s? Little things like that when you're in food and beverage, those are catastrophic things. Or gasoline prices when you're in the logistics business and you have guaranteed contracts for 3 months. Those things can be tough. So you got to be able to weather those. It's the ups and downs just as much as you're in the black. Sometimes you're in the red, and you just had to make sure while you're in the black, you're making more than those little times you dip into the red. And it is that game. Can you be in the black for longer periods of time as a business? Sure, you get better and better at it. I just think there's grace that needs to be given there to the human, but failure is part of it. The other part is, in order to build a company as an entrepreneur, being armed with all the aspects of your business, social media, operations, finance, whatever, is the only way you can truly build a business, by understanding all the pieces of your business. Thereafter, as your business becomes bigger and more of a corporation in some ways, the individuals that will run and lead your company will be less Renaissance man or woman, but the term is Renaissance man, from the Renaissance meaning a well-rounded human like Leonardo da Vinci, good at many things. That is what entrepreneurs are. In order to be a successful business person in the entrepreneur space, we are unfortunately the ones that are never focused on one skill, even though we may be focused on a specific industry and a very small niche within that industry. And in this case, one particular product to get started to build the rest of the products. That's important.
Absolutely.
To understand. Go ahead.
Yeah. One thing I would say as you were describing that, I had a team, and then I did not have a team. And as much as that initial process of being like, oh, I'm going to have to really go this alone from here until, whenever it's clear that a team can be built, it was a gift. It forced me to that much of a deeper dive into everything that was taking place that impacted my company. It forced me to do the financial or marketing things that I didn't have to do because I had a trusted individual doing it. And that is an absolute gift. The comprehension that I have for the entirety of Levitate at this stage versus 6 months ago is, exponentially greater. And so again, like, you know, I think there are a lot of cliches around this kind of adventure, but like you have to be willing to find the positives. You have to be willing to fail forward. You have to be relentless in your optimism. You have to be creative in the way that you tackle problems, and you have to be totally good with getting kicked in the teeth. And it has to be totally cool. You're like, well, I like the smile after that. I think it's a really cool thing. And I think you gain so much more respect for all businesses having gone through the adventure of becoming an entrepreneur and introducing the product and understanding the stress and the burden and the hope and the willing that it is that people will like it. Like there's so many people out there doing this in so many different ways, and having that perspective just makes me appreciate everything in an entirely different light, whether that's a single product on a grocery shelf or an experience at a retail shop or an experience at a restaurant or wherever it is. There are people out there who are truly putting their everything into creating something that they hope will add a benefit to someone. And to be able to go through that process and to provide something that does add a benefit, that's an ultimate joy. And I'm really grateful that I get to have the perspective and feel that for others who are going through it. And I'm really grateful that I get to experience that myself. There's nothing quite comparable to it.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to ask maybe one or two more questions real quick. I think just one. We'll have time for one more. Let's talk about health. I want to talk about why the angle you're taking. There is a lot of health things involved in it. You've been collaborating with athletes in CrossFit space. You've been collaborating with other individuals to build the marketing and the social media. You are involved in that. And I have seen you go do it face to face on social media. And we've talked about it on a couple occasions. But let's talk about the health thing. Why is that important to you? Where do you hope this goes? Let's talk about that. So let's anchor the core values of health, and then sort of where are you hoping this goes? Is it beyond beverages? Like what's the sort of a vision that you have? And obviously we understand pivoting's part of life, but let's just sort of go there.
Sure. So, I wanted, and I have achieved the goal and the desire that is to create something that puts the fun in function. I wanted to make a drink that had functional ingredients that offered benefit while also included a state enhancing fun effect. And so that's why we have the CBG, that's why we have the L-theanine, that's why we have the cordyceps. I wanted to make this social functional product that also had light dose of the euphoric experience, state enhancement, however you want to classify it, that THC offers. And we nailed it on that. We are very unique as a result of that. And, certainly there are some other brands in the collective hemp D9 beverage category that I think have caught on to that or we're doing that in some way, but the majority are not. And so I want to be a part of that category that is thinking thoughtfully about the way that we introduce cannabis in whatever form, either hemp or marijuana, to an individual. There are brands out there that are putting 50 milligrams of THC in a drink. There are brands out there that are putting 100 milligrams of THC in a drink. I think that is why we can't have nice things. I think that that's asinine. And so, holding true to that initial functional approach that even started back when I was doing the gummies with Valor Craft Performance is really important to me. It's something that I'm proud of being able to sort of maintain. And, it's also something that we will continue to strive to do, even if we do introduce a second SKU that is a 10 milligram. We'll still have the functional ingredients. And, that's always going to be core to our approach and our outlook. We want to make products that help you do more with your day, help you do more with your night, help you do more with your life. We want to elevate your spirits. We want you to levitate. and really, really proud of the fact that we were able to hit those markers or wickets in the process of creating this drink. So, what's the next steps? Like I said, we are looking at introducing a second SKU with a slightly higher milligram to meet the market demands and what the consumers are insisting on. And I'd like to think that we'll get to a place down the road, hopefully before the end of this year, where we're also able to introduce a second flavor that we've had sort of on the back burner. Obviously we are now in this stage where we're launching with distributors. I'm actually, this second distributor I'm super excited about because they are specifically focused on the functional space. And, as I mentioned, it's something of trial and error and speed dating when you're talking to these distributors. And some of them are very predatory, and some of them are just looking for the bottom line. And most of them come from large scale alcohol. And so they're already looking at this, with this sort of historical understanding of how they do business. But the historical product that they provide is not a healthy one, right? Alcohol is not good for you. You try and pull up some sort of, survey or study that says that, drinking X amount of wine or whatever is beneficial. Sure. At the end of the day, alcohol has massively toxic, deleterious effects. And I say all that, and I don't drink very often, maybe a handful of times over the course of the year, but I don't boo-hoo it and shun it. But with all that to be said, the narrative around alcohol is now way more broad, way more widely understood to be, in a lot of ways, a negative thing. And so, in that process, you now have massive movements in the non-alcoholic beverage space. You have younger generation who is showing a decline in teen and younger underage drinking. And you also see this boom in this functional ingredient beverage space. And I think that what Levitate does is it answers a lot of those questions. You're an active human, but you still want to have fun. You're a busy parent, but you still want to have fun. You don't drink alcohol, but you still want to have fun. And you want to do it in a functional way. And that's what we are doing with Levitate. That's what we continue to do as we sort of build out our product lines. And it's something that, I at the end of the day am able to feel really good about. And I think that's important. You want to feel good about what it is you provide. And so I'm grateful to be where I am right now with the opportunity to grow into other distribution networks. We're talking to a number of them. And, I was mentioning to you earlier, going through the third and fourth revisions of the budget. Like, I can see that this is real. I know that people like the drink. I know that the product form factor is a growing category with a lot of upside. I know that our differentiating factors are very unique, and we're going to keep trying to be as human as possible and as personal as possible in the way that we grow.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a growing market there, and I think what we're seeing in beverage is true. The beverage market is huge, and I think that the ability to look at what's going on is important. The other thing I think is important is there still need to be social interactions. Humans still want to do things even without alcohol. They still want options in your bars and restaurants, if you're out there, of things like this. I think it's important that we start understanding that this is a natural progression of an option in a similar situation. It is something that people enjoy. It is something that they do. They go out or they have at home or whatever. This is a growing category. And in the outside world, or however that's outside this quote unquote industry, it's no different than alcohol being meshed into food. Or if you serve alcohol, you have to serve food. There's these things, they were totally separate things. And by all means, the ATF is not the FDA or the USDA in the United States, if you're in the United States. And in a lot of countries, it's similar. Right? The thing that regulates alcohol doesn't regulate food, yet they're served in the same establishment.
Yeah. So, and this category will be regulated by alcohol in all likelihood.
Agreed.
And that's okay. But I mean, we sell Levitate in beach cafes. We sell it in a running store. We sell it in a coffee shop. We sell it in a country bar. We sell it in a medical dispensary. We sell it in a chain of chiropractic clinics. We, sell it in bottle shops. We sell it in such fun, versatile array of different places. And I think it speaks not just to the power and the relevance of the category and the fact that people want options, but I think also it speaks to the versatility of the product that we've made and the fact that it can fit in all these places, because not all drinks in the hemp D9 category can fit in all these different places. And, I think with that being said, the education of the consumer is extremely important. And, you have to know, because you see these drinks now popping up in gas stations, you see them in vape stores, you see them in places that I would highly recommend, the buyer to be wary and thoughtful and know that, like, not every product is out there created with the same standard. Not every product is out there with the appropriate certifications of analysis. And, you really want to be thoughtful of that. Now, with all that to say, like, the normalization is happening. I know that very high-end brands are now in point of sale mini fridges at gas station checkout counters all across North Carolina and in other states. But I think, you want to make sure, if you're looking into this as an interested consumer who hasn't tried, you want to make sure that you start off on the right foot, just like you would with anything. I like to sort of joke, like, if you're going to buy a health and wellness product from a gas station, like, you're already in the wrong place. That's where you buy gas. That's where you buy Slim Jims. That's where you buy,
Yeah. There aren't many good options there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's just, one other thing that's fascinating. But yeah, I mean, we're very close to the day and age where this is going to be something that you show up in your grocery store and you get your beer and alcohol and wine section, and there's a whole shelf that is pushing these drinks.
Awesome. If you could go back 2 years ago and tell yourself all the things that you wish you knew then that you know now, what are some of those things?
I think, first and foremost, as you're asking that, the first thought is, like, you're going to be okay. I think in the moment, sometimes this process of building anything can feel really, 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 really overwhelming and make you want to crawl outside of your skin in a lot of ways. But the belief and the consistently reminding yourself that, like, you've seen failure, you're built for this, you're going to be okay. And also, if I could tell myself anything, like, more specifically, I think it would just be, continue to find the right partner. Not every partner is the right partner, and not in the sense of, like, my business partner, but, like, the right retail partner, the right distribution partner, the right manufacturing partner. It's really easy, I think, when you're in the process of building something, to want to chase the shiny object or dance with the first person that tells you they think you're cute. I think it's really important to be, willing to verify and validate, because you can spend a lot of time on the wrong partner in life or in business. And it's important to do that due diligence. And, I feel pretty good about both of those things that I would remind myself if I were to go back. I think I have, believed in myself, and it has been all right. And I have been able to navigate the different challenges. And, I think for the most part, 85% of the time I've been able to pick the right partner. And I would give a lot of the credit in that to, my business partner, my friend, my mentor, James. He's really been helpful in having the experience of building cannabis companies for the last 6-7 years. And he was able to provide guidance in the right ways, and so it's been a really wild experience. I like wild experiences, and we're at a place now where things are starting to feel slightly more calm, but certainly you're always ready for whatever the next challenge would be, and excited for what we have in front of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can they find you online? How can they find you guys on the website and all those sort of things.
Absolutely. So you can find us at our website, www.getlevitate.co. That's co, not .com. You can find us on Instagram at get.levitate. And you can find me at Albie, ALBIE _ Tross, TROSS, on Instagram as well. And Instagram is where we do the dominant amount of our external communications for the time being. And the website is where you can purchase our beverages. We also carry on there a really high-end brand called Wild as an additional form factor that we're able to offer, and they're a really great group. And so I wanted to be able to offer things, gummies alongside my drink, to bundle and configure in different ways. So you'll also see that available there as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Albie, for coming on the show. I appreciate it big time. We'll have to do a part 2, definitely, as you introduce some new beverages and the brand continues to grow, because I want to continue to tell your story for sure.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you. I really do. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to share, and just in general for being someone who's been interested and thoughtful and able to offer advice along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone in the audience, you know, the thing that I'm going to anchor the whole conversation with, as I'm going to close this out, is that entrepreneurism is messy and it's painful and it's suffering, and we put our families at risk, and we do things that are hard, and we make decisions and we keep going, even though the conventional way of thinking is to get comfortable and sort of, well, maybe we're not meant to do that. Okay. Not meant to do something is we fail out of school. Believe me, I know. Like there's when God tells me he doesn't want me going in that direction, the failure is meant to teach me something. Sometimes it's meant to show me that I need to keep going in a different way, or it's something that needs to change in me. But it's always something that has to happen because there's an additional armor or an additional weapon or an additional skill that I need in order to move forward. You know, one of the things that I think is important that we just learned here is we will never be put in a position that we are not prepared for. Okay? We are always being prepared in whatever way possible for the next thing when we pursue growth. In those opportunities that we think everyone is so magically gets because they're special, or they have money, or they have connections, or they have relationships, all the 3 things I just said there, the connections, the relationships, the money, actually happen from the hardest points where you had to drive the U-Haul to deliver something. You had to drive your own food trailer to an event. These moments where you guys are like, I can't wait to make it big or whatever, they're going to be the most valuable parts of your business, where the core values are made, where you're made as a business person, your humility, your understanding and ability to lead your employees and your team members, or whatever you want to call them, in your business will matter, and all the things you learn now as an entrepreneur at the beginning, or even if you're 20 years in, that you're learning now will benefit. You have to pay attention, and you have to spend time in your businesses as an entrepreneur. By the nature of who we are and what we do and how we blaze trails, we're constantly moving, and we have to constantly educate ourselves more than everyone else. We have to constantly be learning, have mentors. We just talked about that on this episode. It's important. But we need to be educating ourselves, and we need to be challenging ourselves, and we need to be willing to change direction. We also talked about that today, from gummies to beverages. And while beverages seem scarier, it's still a niche within beverages. And if done correctly in health and in cannabis, we're talking about an industry that fits perfectly into what already the ATF already does in their regulatory as the United States. And we're also talking about distribution of beverages and the weight of beverages and the possibility of needing refrigeration like some beverages and all of that. It fits in better. So not everything necessarily needs to fit into one thing. When we think about it, it's okay for us not to categorize it and keep it over there in a dark corner by itself and allow it to integrate into our businesses and into our society. It's okay. We know that. And so as a business, as a restaurant, as a food company, as whatever, there's a lot of opportunities to partner with companies like this, boost sales, offer something different. So thanks again, Albie. Thank you everyone for listening in. I love you guys, and we're out.